Welcome back to our channel, guys. Today is an absolutely beautiful day to dive deep into the scandalous, dangerous, and emotionally charged world of our favorite daytime drama. Grab your coffee, settle into your favorite chair, and prepare yourselves, because the streets of Fairmont Crest are currently boiling over with dark secrets, lethal lies, and a psychological game of cat and mouse that is guaranteed to leave you completely breathless. Let us get straight into the absolute chaos that is currently unfolding, because we urgently need to talk about Andre. If you ask me, Andre has been walking on a razor thin tightrope of deception for far too long, and gravity is finally catching up to him in the worst possible way. In an act of pure, unadulterated desperation, Andre seeks out Ted. Yes, you heard me right. Andre goes to Ted, of all people, and completely shatters the illusion of his past by revealing a deeply buried, horrifying secret about Heather. He confesses that his history with Heather was never just some simple, scandalous European fling like everyone originally thought. It is so much darker and far more twisted. Andre warns Ted that Heather is actively repeating the exact same dangerous, terrifying patterns that occurred in their past. My perspective on this: Andre is finally waking up to the reality that he cannot handle this monster alone, but his choice of confidant is about to set off a chain reaction of absolute disaster. When Ted hears this confession, you can practically see the gears violently shifting in his head. Ted is a man who is usually tangled up in his own complicated romantic messes, but in this specific moment, he realizes that they are no longer dealing with a simple case of a jealous ex or a mere personal secret. If Andre's frantic words are true, Heather is hiding a massive, violent chunk of her history that directly ties into the reign of terror orchestrated by the elusive crime boss known as the Impaler. Ted makes a monumental, earth-shattering decision here. Instead of keeping this lethal secret to himself or going to the authorities, he decides to play a very dangerous game. Ted quietly takes this explosive information straight to Smitty, hoping that our resident investigative journalist can dig up the concrete proof they desperately need to stop her. If you ask me, this was Ted's first and potentially fatal mistake, because he just dragged innocent people into the crosshairs of a certified psychopath. Smitty, being the relentless, truth-seeking missile that he is, immediately dives headfirst into the investigation. We all know that Smitty cannot resist a good mystery, especially when it involves the red market and the horrific crimes of the Impaler. He starts pulling at the threads of Heather's past, completely unaware of the venomous spider waiting at the center of the web. Naturally, Martin gets pulled into this chaotic orbit. Martin quickly realizes that his husband is chasing down a lead that is exponentially more dangerous than anything they have ever faced before. Martin's protective instincts flare up, and rightly so. I completely agree with Martin's panic here. You do not just poke a sleeping dragon and expect not to get burned, especially when that dragon runs, an international crime syndicate. But here is the most terrifying part of this entire storyline. They severely underestimated Heather. It does not take long for Heather to sense that the ground beneath her is shifting. She is an apex predator, and she can smell when someone is digging into her carefully constructed lies. Heather discovers subtle signs that the dark secret Andre spilled has somehow leaked out into the wild. With terrifying precision and chilling calmness, she retraces the breadcrumbs and pinpoints exactly who is responsible. She realizes that Ted is the one who whispered her secrets to Smitty. From that very second, the hunter becomes the hunted. Heather begins to silently, maliciously stalk Ted, mapping out his every move while simultaneously marking Smitty as her ultimate primary target. This brings us to a moment of sheer agonizing realization for Andre. He looks at the shifting board and realizes he has made a catastrophic miscalculation. By trying to unburden his own soul and protect himself, he did not just expose Heather's secret. He inadvertently lit the fuse on a massive bomb that is now strapped to Ted, Smitty, and Martin. The guilt washing over Andre is absolutely palpable. He thought he was doing the right thing, but in reality, he just initiated a deadly hunt. And as Smitty inches dangerously close to the absolute truth, Heather launches her counteroffensive. The big question we are all screaming at our screens is, will Heather simply find a violent way to silence Smitty, or is she going to twist this entire investigation into a psychological trap to destroy Ted, Martin, and Andre all at once? Let me tell you, the psychological warfare Heather is currently waging against Smitty and Martin is nothing short of masterful, albeit purely evil. Heather is specifically targeting Smitty because of his award-nominated hard-hitting investigative articles exposing the Impaler. But the absolute mind-bending irony of this situation is that Smitty has absolutely no idea that he is having casual, friendly conversations with the exact same ruthless crime boss he is trying to take down. It is agonizing to watch. I find myself holding my breath every time they share the screen. We see Smitty go home to the safety of his brownstone, completely oblivious to the lethal danger breathing down his neck. He sits down with Martin and actually brags about his recent encounter with Heather. Smitty tells Martin with a proud smile on his face that Heather was the very first person in town to truly recognize his face and show genuine, deep interest in his journalistic work. He muses that the public is truly hungry for justice, hoping that this mysterious impaler will finally be brought to their knees. Smitty even starts theorizing about what dark secrets Leah might be hiding regarding the plasma ring. I was literally yelling at my television, begging Smitty to wake up and realize that the call is coming from inside the house. Martin, ever the voice of reason and the emotional anchor of their family, urges Smitty to go talk to Leah, but he practically begs his husband to tread carefully. Martin is a man who just wants stability for his family, and he looks Smitty in the eyes to deliver a line that gave me absolute chills. He tells him that exposing this criminal syndicate is simply not worth risking his life. Martin can feel the darkness closing in, even if Smitty is completely blinded by his own journalistic ambition and the thrill of the chase. Just as the tension between Martin and Smitty reaches a boiling point, the heavy atmosphere is beautifully broken by a moment of pure domestic warmth. The kids come rushing into the room, their faces lit up with joy, completely oblivious to the lethal danger their fathers are currently navigating. They proudly show off a photograph to Martin and Smitty, and in that brief, fleeting moment, you see the two men visibly soften. They cuddle up together, anchoring themselves in the profound love of their family. It is a stark, heartbreaking contrast to the violence Heather is plotting just outside their front door. Now, let us shift gears and take a much-needed breath of fresh air, because the emotional weight of what is happening over at the diner is just incredibly beautiful. We find ourselves at the cozy, familiar booths of Orphe Jeans, where June is absolutely shining. If you ask my opinion, witnessing June's journey toward redemption has been one of the most rewarding experiences as a longtime viewer. She is currently serving up a massive, steaming plate of mouth-watering peach cobbler waffles to Tyrell and Samantha. June even goes the extra mile, adding a generous dollop of whipped cream for Samantha, and warmly invites herself to slide into the booth with them. The conversation that follows is so deeply moving that it requires its own deep dive. June opens up about her current state of mind, expressing an overwhelming, radiant happiness. She talks about the immense pride she feels in finally being sober, holding down a steady job, and most importantly, just being allowed to sit there and share a simple meal with her beautiful children. As she looks across the table at Tyrell, June's eyes well up with heavy tears. She is completely overcome with emotion, marveling at the fact that the fragile little boy she once knew has transformed into such a handsome, grown man. She even promises to bake him a fresh batch of that peach cobbler to take back to his college campus. But Tyrell is carrying a heavy heart, and he finally lets his protective walls down. When June innocently brings up Jessica, Tyrell's face falls and he confesses the painful truth. Jessica broke up with him. He was dumped and his heart is entirely shattered. June's reaction is everything a mother's love should be. While she is genuinely saddened to hear that her son is in pain, she immediately steps in with some much needed perspective. She tells Tyrell that he is far too young to be rushing into serious commitments or tying himself down to one person. And in a moment of lighthearted maternal pride, she reminds him that with the incredibly good looks he inherited directly from her, he will have absolutely no shortage of romantic options in the future. It is a sweet, tender moment of profound healing. Right on cue, Isaiah strolls into the diner, bringing that perfect, slightly irritating older brother energy that we all know and love. He takes one look at Tyrell and immediately starts teasing him, joking that Tyrell looks like he has packed on a little bit of that classic freshman weight. But Isaiah quickly drops the teasing and asks Tyrell how he is really holding up after the brutal breakup. Isaiah drops some genuine wisdom, explaining that getting your heart broken is just a painful, unavoidable part of the messy journey of growing up. Tyrell, still nursing his bruised ego, just shrugs and mutters a quiet agreement. It is such a realistic, wonderfully grounded interaction amidst all the high stakes drama happening elsewhere in town. Before Isaiah heads out, June lovingly hands him a warm bag of freshly baked cornbread, a small but highly significant gesture of her newfound stability, generosity, and care. But the true emotional climax of this scene happens just as Tyrell is preparing to leave the diner. June reaches into her belongings with trembling hands and pulls out a precious, weathered childhood photograph of Tyrell and Samantha from when they were just little kids. She hands it over to Tyrell, softly telling him to hang it up in his dorm room as a constant reminder of where he comes from and how much he is loved. Tyrell is completely overwhelmed by the gesture. He reaches out, tightly grasping his mother's hand, and looks her dead in the eye to tell her just how much he truly loves her. That is all it takes to break the dam. June absolutely breaks down into loud, cathartic sobs. The years of agonizing guilt, the searing pain of addiction, the constant fear of losing them forever, it all washes away in that single, transcendent moment. Tyrell and Samantha immediately lean in, and the three of them share this massive, desperate, beautiful group hug right there in the middle of the diner. I am not ashamed to admit that I was crying right along with them. It was absolute television perfection. Later on, back at the safety of the brownstone, the emotional resonance of that diner encounter lingers heavily in the air. Tyrell is telling Martin and Smitty all about the beautiful moment, explaining to his fathers just how deeply he cherishes that old photograph and what it meant to hear June speak from the heart. But Samantha, who carries the much heavier burden of being the older sibling who remembers the bad times, drops a sobering reality check on the room. She looks at the photograph and remembers the exact tragic context of when it was taken. She reveals that the picture was snapped on one of the very last days that June was actually sober and lucid, right before the dark, suffocating cloud of addiction completely swallowed her whole and tore their family apart. Tyrell looks at the photo with a profound sense of longing, quietly wishing that he was old enough to actually remember that specific day rather than just relying on the physical print to manufacture a memory. The room grows quiet, the immense weight of their traumatic past settling over them like a thick blanket. But Smitty, ever the beacon of relentless optimism in his household, steps up to the plate. He looks at his children, offers a warm, deeply reassuring smile, and promises them that regardless of the pain in their past, their future holds so many incredible, beautiful things to look forward to. It is a deeply touching sentiment to end on, but guys, as a viewer, it fills me with an overwhelming, suffocating sense of dread. Here is Smitty promising his family a bright, safe, and happy future, completely unaware that a ruthless, calculating monster named Heather is currently lurking in the shadows, actively plotting to tear their entire world apart. The juxtaposition of this beautiful family healing while a deadly trap snaps shut around them is pure, unadulterated, dramatic genius. We are in for an incredibly wild ride, and I cannot wait to see how this all explodes in the coming days.